I'm Charlotte McLeod with investingnews.com, and here today with me are Anna Serin, Director, Listings Development at the Canadian Securities Exchange, and Eduardo Carmona, Business Development at the National Stock Exchange of Australia. Thank you both for being here. Great to have you.
Thank you for having us.
Of course. We've got a lot to get into today. I think it's going to be an exciting conversation. I want to hone in on the CSE's recent acquisition of the NSX. So this closed back in October, but since you're both here together at VRC, it's a good chance for us to unpack what it means for companies and also, of course, for investors. So I thought we could start with the basics. Eduardo, if you could explain what the NSX is for people who aren't familiar.
Yep, fantastic. I think to begin talking about the NSX, you have to go back a little bit in history and where our roots began. Our roots date back to the 1800s with the Bendigo Stock Exchange during the gold rush in Australia. It then formed into the Newcastle Stock Exchange and then the National Stock Exchange of Australia, the NSX, as we know it today in 2006. We've had quite a rich history with a lot of precedent. For example, we actually might believe that we were the first stock exchange to tokenize real-life assets when we tokenized vats of wine between 2001 and 2003. We also had a taxi license plate market until a pesky little company called Uber came around. But more notably, and I think most importantly, and one of the reasons we're here today, as you mentioned just briefly, the CSE announced its acquisition back in May. It wrapped up in October. And we've done a few things in place to prepare us for what that relationship will look like, which we're excited for. But one of the principal things we did right after the acquisition as well is what we went off and got the CSE recognizing it as ASIC, the financial regulatory body in Australia. What we're hoping to create and where we think the opportunity lays in Australia is creating the venture market a little bit like the CSE's done here. We don't shy away to say we're a little bit more ambitious sometimes because there is no current venture market currently in Australia. So we want to be a bit of the TSXV and the CSE combined. Quite a big opportunity there, I think, for Australia. And I think the big mantra we like to say and we follow is that one size doesn't fit all. So it's a bit tough for companies with a market cap of 5 million doing mining in Perth to be, under the same scrutiny as the Rio Tintos, the BHPs of this world with market caps in the billions.
Right. Great overview of the history and how this acquisition makes sense for the NSX. And Anna, I'll ask you as well, from the CSE perspective, why did you pursue this deal?
We've been spending some time in Australia for quite a few years now. We recognized several years ago that our issuers were ambitious to access the Australian markets. The Australian markets have a fantastic retail investor sector. They have some great programs that allow for lots of liquidity within their marketplace, and they love the mining space. So we found that a lot of our issuers were wanting to access Australia, and they were really struggling to do so. And so we started building a relationship with the National Stock Exchange of Australia. They had very similar approach to policies, regulatory framework, and how they deal with their issuers and apply their framework to them. So as we started working with them, there was an opportunity for us to acquire them and be able to impart our wisdom, our technology, and our expertise that's in our background to what they're trying to build. So it's a very exciting moment for us, and it's offering our issuers an opportunity to access Australia in a way that they've never been able to access. This is for issuers in any country, and any exchange in Canada are able to access them now.
Yeah, definitely. I can see the synergies and how the deal makes sense. And I want to get into the company side and the investor side, how this makes sense. So let's start with the companies and what this deal allows companies in Canada as well as Australia. How does it improve their access to both of those markets? And maybe we continue with Anna and then we'll move over.
Sure. I think, the one thing that from a global perspective, I think Canada's really recognized as a safe jurisdiction for companies to go public in the growth sector. So wherever their asset is, whatever their operation is, going public in Canada is very recognized globally from an investor perspective. And so issuers that are listed in Canada are very well liked in Australia. They love Canadian assets. They love Canadian public companies. And there actually is a lot more synergies between our two regulatory frameworks than I think any other jurisdiction. And so there are a lot of similarities that already exist, making it easier for issuers to transpose what they're already doing from a disclosure perspective into the Australian framework.
Well, and maybe we hear also from Eduardo on how it works in that vice versa type of way.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I think the big interest, and I think what's attracting a lot of Canadian companies at the moment is that's usually a bit of a pendulum between two capital markets in terms of valuations. I think a company spreading across itself, across two capital markets, makes its shares more resilient. You know, what's hot in one market might not be so hot in the other, but this way you're diversified a little bit and you're reaching to a very well mining educated investor basis. With that said, right, we're very industry agnostic. We're open to all, but just right now where it makes the most sense, especially while we're here in VRIC, it's to, target those mining companies. And I think a lot of the benefit of a company coming over to Australia and seeking that dual listing and vice versa as well, right, is I think two things. I think principally it opens it up to the idea of 24-hour trading, spreading yourself across two markets that are quite widespread by distance and time, as you may know. But also, I think in Australia, we've got something very valuable, which is the superannuation system. So for those who don't know, that is the pension system we have in Australia. It's very well looked after, and these superannuations, right, they've got almost investment banking sized offices, and they're one of the few ones in the world that are still doing individual stock picking with certain mandates to invest a lot in the domestic market, i.e. Australia. So that provides a pretty good opportunity for companies.
And I think, Eduardo, to add to that, that's probably why a lot of Australian investors like issuers to have a local marketplace, right? So the dual listing becomes even more relevant.
That's exactly it.
Yeah.
Okay, so companies, we can definitely see how the dual listing can benefit for them. And let's look at the investor side as well. Of course, if there are dual listing, then we can see how investors have much easier access. But is there anything that you would add on the investor side that is beneficial to know about?
Yeah. So I think for investors looking to the companies, right, it's, again, very mining educated markets. So for the investors, there's more opportunity there, right? They've got the risk appetite because they're more used to these sort of companies, especially with exploration companies basically coming out of Australia. So what that allows is for really big projects to get ahead, right? And it's not just kept within the big mining conglomerates.
Yeah, I think I do hear that Australian investors really just kind of understand the mining sector maybe a little bit better than even people in Canada do. Yeah. Let's talk about the Canadian investor side as well, because I do know that people want access to those Australian companies. So can you talk a little bit more about that demand?
Absolutely. I think that we've seen some interest from Australian listed issuers to access Canada. The one thing that we have at the CSE is that we're a recognized foreign exchange with the SEC. So if you dual list with the CSE, then you get your OTC ticker and you have access to all of North America. We are seeing some interest from the tech side out of Australia because it really does give them that North American opportunity, as well as the mining sector as well.
Yeah. Good to point out the kind of that gateway into North America as a whole. I think that's really important. And maybe that gives us a good road to talking about what trends are you seeing in terms of company listings across both of the exchanges? You mentioned there's interest on the tech side. Any other trends that you're noticing develop?
I think the one thing that I've really noticed as we kind of take a look at the financings that are happening at the CSE is that most of the ones that we're seeing are oversubscribed. Most are in the resource sector currently. We're seeing lots in life sciences as well. And a lot of them are outside of Canadian borders. So we're seeing that real importance and value on, yes, maybe being listed in Canada, but accessing capital outside of our borders.
And I'll ask the same about trends in listings on the NSX, because I think that's a pretty interesting topic.
Yeah, absolutely. I think when we look at what the near future and the future of the NSX looks like, we like to kind of put it into three buckets. The first one, even though it wasn't the motivation for the acquisition, it's definitely been a benefit. And we're seeing a lot of interest from not just CSC, but TSXV and TSX companies wanting to dual list in Australia. So we're engaging with quite a few in conversations like that, and we're probably expecting that to come to fruition, in the next year or two. Someone will be the first, someone will be on the sidelines and watch the first go by and then jump in after. The second one would be transfers from our competing exchange. We set up a program where it's quite cost effective and time efficient to move over considering you're in the same jurisdiction, same local market, it should be quite easy to just get everything over since you have all your announcements and your reporting obligations done in place. And then the third one, which is also quite exciting, we'd like to call it the newer novel IPOs. We're working with some kind of crypto-based listings that would be the first of its kind in Australia. We're quite proactive and we're engaging with ASIC, the local financial regulatory body, and they're kind of like giving us the green light to get that listing ahead. So we're putting hopefully the formal application in soon. And if that, we'd have a product not available anywhere else in Australia, which would be a pretty good opportunity for the NSX.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. And I'll ask a little follow-up just on which kind of companies the NSX is right for. I think for our audience, we understand, because we're mostly focused on Canada, North America, they understand the difference between CSE and the TSX, TSXV. But NSX versus ASX, which companies would you want to see come to the NSX?
Yeah, of course. I think, look, in the long run, we're open to all sorts of companies, right? But right now, I think what makes more sense for people, where the real value is and what we're offering, would be younger entrepreneurial companies who are looking for kind of a listing rule set that suits them best. We like to say we're a lighter touch listing rules, which not much interpretation, is very straightforward, and we believe that helps those younger companies. With that said, and with the theme of the venture market that we're trying to create, right, I'll just kind of list through the listing requirements so you get an idea of what the companies and the barriers to entry are. So we have no minimum listing share price. We ask for a shareholder spread of 50, a free float of 25, but no assets tests, no profits tests, and a minimum market cap of 500,000 AUD. On top of that, we ask for 2 years audited financials. We're also accustomed to working with younger companies. So if you're a company that hasn't run for 2 years, we'll look at the experience of the board and the C-suite members, see if that experience is enough for us to waiver maybe that to audit financials. But with that said, it encompasses younger companies, lower barriers to entry, and kind of going again with the theme of one size does not fit all. So offering a home for those who may be punished by that higher level of scrutiny.
I think the one thing that we saw an alignment was that the NSX is maybe what the CSE was, 10 or 15 years ago. And I think we come to it as a similar approach of being able to create really streamlined, well understood policies and how we're going to approach them. What we found is when we created that program in Canada is that the really growth-centered issuers, as they grew, wanted to stay with us. So now we've become an exchange that's very diverse in our size, in our sector, and I think that's the real opportunity for NSX going forward as well.
Oh yeah, absolutely right. And having you guys as our mentors, we hope to kind of repeat your success here in Canada over in Australia, and hopefully on a more expedited timeline.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I can definitely see how it all lines up. And good point on the growth, because of course I've seen that over the last years at the CSE. So you mentioned you hope to see it move faster at the NSX. How many listings are there now? Do you have a target in mind for that, or we'll see how it goes?
Yeah, look, always see how it goes. There's a lot of playing parts with many things in life. We've got around 50 listings at the moment. I think, of course, a big round number, everyone likes 100. So if we could get to that in the next 1 or 2 years, that'd be absolutely awesome. But yeah, I'm ambitious to do it all.
We did a roadshow in late 2025 with our CEO, Richard Carlton, and the NSX CEO, Max Cunningham. I was quite taken aback by just how encouraging the marketplace was. So I think that there's a lot of, we spoke to a lot of stakeholders within the marketplace saying there is a lot of interest, there's a lot of companies that want to come forward. So I have high hopes that it'll do well over the next year or two.
Well, it sounds like a really exciting future for both of the exchanges. Is there anything final that either of you would add before I let you both go?
I think the only thing I want to add is that, we really are seeing in the marketplace, especially in Canada, that our issuers and our investors are wanting to leave our borders and have opportunity to invest in companies outside of Canada. Our issuers are needing to leave Canada to raise capital. But what we're seeing is that it's starting to happen in a very cohesive way. And this is just, I think, adding to that opportunity.
Yeah. And what I'll add to that as well is that Also, I think a big part of our mission is going forward is spreading the word at the NSX, right? Letting people become familiar with the brand and the exchange, not just in a domestic market, but on an international scale. So please look out for us. We've got a lot of engagement, especially we believers in engaging with the younger demographics. So we do have a podcast. So if you're interested in learning more about the Australian capital markets, not just, the boring stuff, but also the characters that have formed it over time, please feel free to tune in.
Amazing. Well, thank you both very much for coming on to explain the acquisition, what's going on in the future. This is great.
Thank you so much, Charlotte.
Of course.
Thank you very much for having us.
Of course. And once again, I'm Charlotte McLeod with investingnews.com, and this is Anna Serin and Eduardo Carmona.